always thought I knew solitude, until the night the blizzard brought them to my door. The wind howled like a wounded animal, scraping ice against my cabin windows, while inside, the fire struggled against drafts that slithered through the cracks of my 100-year-old home. The scent of pine and wood smoke filled the air, mingling with the herbal tea I cradled between my palms. Outside, the forest had disappeared beneath waves of white, turning familiar landmarks into ghosts draped in snow. It was the kind of storm that made people whisper about the old legends, tales of travelers lost forever in white nothingness, of spirits that rode the wind looking for souls to collect. Grandmother would have called it a night when the veil between worlds grows thin. The thought brought a familiar ache as my fingers instinctively reached for the silver pendant hanging at my throat, her final gift, engraved with a crescent moon and a single wolf. Protection, she'd whispered before slipping away 3 winters ago, leaving me truly alone in this vast wilderness. I was nobody in the nearby town of Blackridge, just the strange, quiet girl with pale blonde hair who lived too far in the woods, who knew too much about herbs and too little about people, the hermit's granddaughter who never quite fit. They tolerated my weekly visits to sell my homemade remedies in the market, but the whispers never stopped. Odd one, they'd say. Wild one. Sometimes, witch. I'd learned to pull my coat tighter and keep my eyes down. The first howl nearly blended with the wind, but the second made me freeze, tea halfway to my lips. Not wind. Wolves. My heart stammered an uneven rhythm as I set down my mug and moved to the window, wiping frost from the glass. Nothing but swirling snow and darkness beyond the faint glow of my porch light. Then, movement. Shadows darker than the night itself, circling my small clearing. Just wolves, I whispered to myself. They won't approach the house, but even as I spoke, something felt different. Their movements seemed deliberate, almost human in their calculation. I counted 1, 2, 10 massive shapes prowling the edges of my property. The knock, when it came, nearly stopped my heart. Nobody knocked on my door. Not in summer, certainly not in the middle of the worst blizzard in decades. I stood frozen in the center of my small living room, watching as the brass knob turned, tested from the outside. My throat closed with fear. The knocking came again, more urgent. "Please," a deep voice called, barely audible above the storm. "We need shelter." Something in that voice, raw desperation mixed with unmistakable command, had me moving forward before my mind could catch up to warn me of the foolishness. When I pulled the door open, the wind nearly tore it from my grasp. A man stood on my porch, tall enough that he had to duck beneath the beam, with shoulders that filled the doorframe. Behind him, shadowy figures waited, snow coating their dark clothes, but it was his eyes that held me, amber, almost golden in the lamplight, with a wildness that sent a primitive shiver down my spine. "The storm," he said, his breath clouding between us. "We were tracking north when it hit. Our vehicles are buried 2 miles back." I clutched the doorframe, feeling suddenly, impossibly small. "There are 10 of you?" Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, before he nodded once. Later, I would wonder what madness possessed me, what instinct overrode all caution. Perhaps it was grandmother's voice in my head, reminding me that to turn away those in need during winter was to court the disfavor of ancient powers. Perhaps it was simply that in his fierce expression, I recognized something familiar, the look of someone who, like me, lived at the edges of ordinary life. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. Before we all freeze, they filed past me in silence. 9 men and 1 woman, each nodding respect as they entered. All were dressed in blacks and grays, their clothes expensive but functional, made for the wilderness. All moved with the same predatory grace. And all looked to the first man, waiting for his subtle nod before removing their snow-covered boots and coats. "I'm Alara," I said, when the door was finally closed against the storm. The leader studied me for a long moment before answering. "Roman." No last name, no further explanation, just the weight of his gaze, heavy as a physical touch. "These are my associates." He introduced them with single names: Magnus, Vex, Nora, Asher, Dominic, Cade, Flynn, Raven, and Theo, each watching me with varying degrees of curiosity and wariness. I felt like a rabbit suddenly surrounded by predators, unsure if they considered me prey or simply an unexpected variable. "There's not much space," I managed, gesturing to my small cabin. "But you're welcome to what I have." I busied myself with stoking the fire, setting water to boil, pulling every spare blanket from the storage trunk. Anything to avoid meeting those unsettling eyes that seemed to track my every movement. The cabin, usually so spacious for just one person, now felt cramped with their towering presences. They spoke little, communicating in glances and subtle gestures, positioning themselves around the room with a coordination that seemed almost military in its precision. Roman claimed the chair nearest the door, legs stretched before him, watching as I worked. There was something protective in his posture, though whether he was protecting his people from me or me from them, I couldn't tell. "You live here alone?" he asked, as I handed him a steaming mug of tea. "Yes," I said, and something in his expression tightened. "In the middle of nowhere, during winter." I lifted my chin. "I'm quite capable." A smile ghosted across his face, transforming the severe lines into something devastating. "I can see that." His companions exchanged glances, and the woman, Nora, hid a smile behind her mug. Something unspoken passed between them, a private joke I wasn't privy to. "You've been very kind," Roman continued, his voice rumbling low. "Most would think twice before letting 10 strangers into their home." "Most don't live where the cold kills within hours," I replied. "Besides, my grandmother believed in the old ways. Hospitality during winter storms is sacred." "The old ways," he repeated, leaning forward slightly. "You believe in those?" I felt a flush creep up my neck. "I believe it's unwise to dismiss what you don't understand." His gaze intensified, searching my face for something, a wise philosophy. As the night deepened, the storm showed no signs of weakening. "I made a simple soup from my stores. Nothing fancy, just root vegetables and herbs. But they ate with appreciation. Their conversations were guarded, falling silent whenever I came too close. But I caught fragments that made little sense. Talk of territories, of councils, of alliances and threats. Once, the one called Magnus mentioned pacts to the north, only to receive a sharp look from Roman that cut his words short. I told myself they were probably some sort of wilderness guide company, or perhaps wealthy adventurers with their own peculiar jargon. But the way they moved, the constant alertness, the deference they showed to Roman, it reminded me more of wolves than men. Sleep arrangements proved challenging. I offered my small bedroom to Nora, who accepted with a gracious nod, while the men arranged themselves throughout the main room. I would take the window seat, I decided, padding it with extra blankets. "You'll freeze there," Roman said, appearing silently at my side as I prepared my makeshift bed. "Take the couch. I'll keep watch." "Watch for what?" I asked, then regretted it when his expression shuddered. "Old habits," he answered. "We've trespassed enough on your kindness." I wanted to argue, but exhaustion was settling into my bones. The last thing I remembered before drifting to sleep was Roman's silhouette against the firelight, his watchful gaze fixed on the storm-lashed windows, as though expecting more than snow to come hunting through the night. I dreamed of wolves that night, massive creatures with intelligent eyes, running through snow so deep it reached their powerful shoulders. In my dream, I ran with them, fearless and free, my pale hair streaming behind me like a banner. The largest wolf, midnight black with eyes like amber fire, ran at my side, our paces perfectly matched as we led the pack through moonlit forests. When morning came, it arrived with an unnatural stillness. The storm had passed, leaving a world transformed, buried under snow that sparkled blindingly beneath a clear sky. I woke to find most of my unexpected guests already moving quietly about the cabin, packing their few belongings, speaking in hushed tones. Roman was at the window, staring out at the pristine expanse, his powerful frame silhouetted against the morning light. He turned as I sat up, and something in his gaze, a hunger, an intensity, sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with the winter chill. "The pass will be clear by midday," he said. "We'll leave then." I nodded, ignoring the strange twinge of disappointment. Of course they would leave. They had lives to return to, destinations beyond my isolated existence. I rose and began preparing a simple breakfast, aware of Roman's eyes following me as I moved about the kitchen. He approached as I worked, his presence a tangible weight at my back. "You saved our lives last night." I kept my eyes on the task before me. Anyone would have done the same. "No," he said, and something in his voice made me turn to face him. "They wouldn't have, especially not knowing what we are." A chill traced my spine. "And what are you?" The question hung between us, heavy with implications I couldn't fully grasp. Roman's eyes seemed to gleam with that strange amber light as he studied my face. "I think," he said softly, "you already know." Before I could respond, a shout came from outside. Dominic burst through the door, face tense. "Sir, Northern Scouts, 3 miles and closing fast." Roman's entire demeanor changed in an instant, relaxed watchfulness transforming into coiled readiness. "How many?" "At least 20. A muscle jumped in Roman's jaw. "They followed our trail through the storm. Persistent bastards." He turned to me, decision made. "Alara, we need to leave, now, and you're coming with us." "What?" "No, I can't just—" His hand closed gently but firmly around my wrist. "Those men coming through the forest aren't here to exchange pleasantries. They've been hunting us for weeks. And now, because you've sheltered us, they'll assume you're under our protection." "Under your protection?" I repeated, confusion and fear mingling in my chest. "I don't understand. Who are you people?" Roman's gaze held mine, and in that moment something passed between us. A current of recognition that defied rational explanation. The truth would sound like madness. "Try me," I whispered. Around us, his companions were moving with swift efficiency, gathering supplies, checking sightlines through windows. The atmosphere had shifted from cautious guests to something else entirely, a unit preparing for conflict. "The men hunting us," Roman said, his voice low enough that only I could hear, "believe we possess something that belongs to them. Territory, power." His thumb brushed across my pulse point, sending warmth spiraling up my arm. "They're wrong, but they won't stop until they've eliminated any threat to their ambition, and now that includes you." My grandmother's pendant seemed suddenly warm against my skin. The wolf and moon, an ancient symbol I'd always worn without fully understanding. Roman's eyes flickered to it, recognition flashing in their amber depths. "Your grandmother," he said. "She knew what walked in these woods, didn't she?" The room seemed to tilt around me as pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known I was solving began to fall into place. The old stories grandmother told by firelight. The careful boundaries she taught me never to cross during full moons. The respect she insisted we show to the wolves that sometimes howled beyond our clearing. "Time's up," Magnus called from the window. "They've picked up our scent." Roman's grip on my wrist tightened. "Trust me," he said, and it wasn't quite a question. "Please." I looked around at my small home, the only safe place I'd ever known, and made a decision that would forever divide my life into before and after. I grabbed my emergency pack, always ready by the door, slipped my feet into boots, and reached for my coat. "Lead the way," I said, and stepped into a world suddenly filled with dangers I'd only glimpsed in dreams. The forest I'd known my entire life transformed into an alien landscape as we ran. What had once been familiar paths became treacherous obstacle courses beneath 3 feet of fresh snow. Roman moved ahead, breaking trail with inhuman endurance, while the others formed a protective formation around me. Despite my lifetime in these woods, I quickly fell behind their pace, my lungs burning with each frozen breath. "We need to move faster," Vex muttered, his dark eyes scanning the tree line behind us. "She's doing her best," Nora countered, dropping back to run alongside me. Unlike the men who seemed barely winded, she showed signs of exertion, but nothing compared to my own struggle. Roman glanced back, assessing my faltering steps with a quick sweep of those amber eyes. Without warning, he backtracked to my side, bent slightly at the knees, and said, "Get on my back." "I can walk," I protested between gasps. "They're gaining," Theo called from behind. "I can hear them crossing the creek." Roman's expression hardened. "This isn't a request." Before I could argue further, he'd swept me onto his back as though I weighed nothing, my arms instinctively wrapping around his shoulders. The sudden proximity overwhelmed my senses, the heat radiating from his body despite the bitter cold, the impossible strength as he resumed our pace without apparent effort. The scent of him that triggered something primal in my hindbrain. Wild, dangerous, safe. "Where are we going?" I managed to ask, my breath warming the skin of his neck. "Our territory," he answered simply, as though that explained everything. The miles blurred beneath Roman's tireless stride. Around us, the others moved with the same fluid coordination I'd noticed in my cabin, communicating with hand signals and occasional terse words. Twice, Roman suddenly changed direction, and the others followed without question. The third time, when we veered sharply eastward toward rockier terrain, I understood. They were laying false trails, doubling back, using every tactic to confuse whoever pursued us. We paused only once, in a small ravine sheltered from the wind. Roman set me down carefully, and I fought to hide how my legs trembled with exhaustion and cold. He noticed anyway, shrugging out of his outer layer and draping it around my shoulders before I could protest. "Your body temperature is dropping," he said, matter-of-factly. "Hypothermia begins at the extremities. Your fingers are already showing early signs." I looked down at my hands, surprised to see the pale blue tinge to my fingertips. I hadn't even noticed. Magnus approached, his massive frame blocking the weak winter sunlight. "They've split into 3 groups," he reported. 8 coming straight for us, others circling to flank. "Can we outrun them?" Asher asked, the youngest of their group, his face tense with concern as he glanced my way. Roman's jaw tightened, not with her. The words weren't accusatory, just factual, but they stung nonetheless. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm slowing you down. Maybe I should—" "If you suggest we leave you behind," Roman cut in, his voice deadly quiet, "I will be very disappointed." The way he said it, as though his disappointment was something to be feared above all else, silenced me. Around us, the others exchanged glances loaded with meanings I couldn't decipher. "We make our stand at the old boundary stones," Roman decided. "Cade, Flynn, circle back, delay the eastern group. Raven, Theo, lay false trails north, the rest with me. We hold position until moonrise if necessary." A series of nods answered him. No arguments, no questions, just absolute trust in his judgment. Cade and Flynn slipped away immediately, vanishing into the trees with barely a sound. Raven and Theo followed moments later in the opposite direction. As we resumed our journey, now a smaller group, I noticed Roman constantly scanning our surroundings, his movements becoming increasingly territorial. Twice he paused, head lifted, testing the air like a wolf scenting danger. The thought, once formed, refused to be dismissed. The way they moved, the heightened senses, the pack dynamics, Roman's amber eyes that sometimes caught the light at impossible angles. All of it clicked into place with the legends grandmother had whispered on winter nights, stories I'd always believed were metaphors, warnings dressed as fantasy to keep me safe in the wilderness. "You're not just guides," I said against his ear. "You're not ordinary men." Roman's stride didn't falter, but something in his posture shifted, a tension that hadn't been there before. "This conversation requires better timing," he replied. "Those pursuing us," I pressed, unable to stop now that understanding was dawning. "They're like you, aren't they?" He turned his head slightly, enough that I could see the sharp profile of his face. "Yes and no. We share a nature, but not values or purpose." "And what nature is that?" I asked, heart thundering in my chest. Instead of answering, Roman came to an abrupt halt. Ahead, half buried in snow but unmistakable, stood 3 ancient stones arranged in a rough triangle. Each was easily 7 feet tall, weathered by centuries, and carved with symbols time had nearly erased. I recognized them from my foraging expeditions. The boundary stones, grandmother had called them. She'd been adamant I never cross beyond them alone. Now I understood why. "We're home," Roman said, allowing me to slide from his back. As my boots touched the ground within the triangle of stones, a strange sensation washed over me. Like stepping through an invisible curtain into slightly warmer air. Magnus and the others immediately took up positions at the perimeter, while Nora helped me to a fallen log cleared of snow. Roman stood at the center of our makeshift camp, eyes closed, head tilted back slightly. The posture reminded me of prayer, but his expression suggested something more primal, connection to forces older than religion. When his eyes opened again, they burned with renewed purpose. "The stones will mask our scent temporarily," he explained, crouching before me. "But we have perhaps an hour before they find us. I need you to understand what happens next." Fear coiled in my stomach. "Are you going to fight them?" "If necessary." His hands, surprisingly gentle for their size, took mine, chafing warmth back into my frozen fingers. "But first I need to tell you what your grandmother clearly never did." I swallowed hard. "You're werewolves." The word fell from my lips, sounding simultaneously ridiculous and absolutely right. A smile, brief but genuine, transformed his severe features. "Close enough. We call ourselves the Shifted, humans with the ability to take wolf form, passed down through bloodlines." Despite the circumstances, I felt oddly calm, as though some part of me had always known this reality existed alongside the mundane world. "And you're what? Their leader?" "I'm Alpha of the Eastern Territories," he corrected. "What humans might call a king, though we don't use that term among ourselves. The men hunting us are from a northern pack that's recently fallen under new leadership, a leader who believes expansion through violence is his right." "Why were you in my part of the forest?" I asked, struggling to reconcile my entire worldview with this new information. "Diplomatic mission gone wrong. We were attempting to negotiate with neutral territories when we were ambushed. The blizzard was unexpected providence." His thumb traced circles on my wrist, an absent gesture that seemed to calm him. "Your cabin was salvation, and now I'm caught in the middle of your war." His expression darkened. "This isn't a war yet, but it could become one, depending on what happens in the next few hours." He paused, studying my face with unsettling intensity. "There's something else you should know, something about you." A shout from Magnus interrupted whatever revelation hovered on his lips. "Movement. Northwest quadrant." Roman was on his feet instantly, the gentleness vanishing beneath the mantle of leadership. "How many?" "First wave. 6, maybe 7. Dominic appeared at Roman's side, expression grim. "Sir, we're outnumbered without the others, and moonrise is still 4 hours away." I looked between them, confused. "What happens at moonrise?" "Our strength is greatest then," Nora explained quietly, helping me to my feet. "Outside the full moon, shifting is possible but depletes energy faster. They're timing this to catch us at our weakest." Roman was already issuing rapid commands, positioning his remaining pack members in a defensive formation. To my shock, he directed Nora to stay with me in the center of the stone triangle. "I can help," she protested. "Not this time," Roman countered, voice brooking no argument. "Your priority is her safety." Nora's expression tightened with frustration, but she nodded once, taking up position at my side. I wanted to object, to insist I wasn't worth their protection. But the words died in my throat as the first of our pursuers appeared at the tree line. They emerged like shadows solidifying, men dressed in dark clothing similar to Roman's group, but with a crucial difference. Where Roman and his pack moved with disciplined grace, these men prowled with barely contained aggression. Their leader, a tall figure with cruel features and eyes like chips of ice, stepped forward with casual confidence. "Roman," he called, voice carrying across the clearing. "Always running. Is that what the great Alpha of the East has been reduced to?" Roman's stance shifted subtly, shoulders squaring, chin lifting. Even from behind, I could sense the change in his demeanor. "Victor," he replied, voice calm but edged with authority, crossing boundaries without invitation. Still struggling with basic protocol, I see. The man, Victor, laughed, the sound devoid of warmth. Boundaries change, power shifts. His gaze slid past Roman to where I stood with Nora, and his expression changed to one of calculated interest. "And what have we here? A human pet?" Something visceral and protective flashed through me at his dismissive tone. Without thinking, I stepped forward, ignoring Nora's restraining hand on my arm. "I'm the woman whose home you would have invaded," I called, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "The one who sheltered these men from the storm while you hunted them like animals." Victor's eyes narrowed, reassessing me with dangerous focus. "Brave little thing, aren't you?" He inhaled deeply, an exaggerated gesture that reminded me uncomfortably of a predator sampling the air. And interesting, you smell different. Roman moved with lightning speed, placing himself between me and Victor's line of sight. She's under my protection, he said, voice dropping to a register that seemed to vibrate through the clearing. Leave now, and we'll consider this unfortunate trespass a diplomatic oversight. Protection? Victor repeated, smile widening to reveal teeth too sharp for comfort. Or is it possession? You've always been traditional, Roman. I wonder if you've claimed this one properly. A growl, an actual rumbling growl, emanated from Roman's chest. Around us, tension thickened the air, as both sides coiled with potential violence. I didn't understand the implications of Victor's taunt, but the effect on Roman and his pack was electric. Dominic and Asher moved closer to their alpha, while Magnus shifted to cover our flank. The girl comes with us, Victor continued, a gesture of goodwill on your part, a down payment on future cooperation between our territories. Not happening, Roman replied, the words clipped and final. Victor sighed dramatically. I thought you might say that, which is why I brought insurance. He gestured casually, and 2 more of his men emerged from the trees, dragging a third figure between them. My heart dropped as I recognized Cade, one of the men who had gone to lay false trails. His face was bloodied, his left arm hanging at an unnatural angle. Despite his obvious pain, his expression remained defiant. Your scout was careless, Victor explained. Or perhaps suicidal, attacking 4 of my best alone. The other one escaped, unfortunately. Let him go, Roman demanded, voice deadly quiet. Victor pretended to consider the request. I could, in exchange for the girl. Why? I blurted out, earning sharp looks from both sides. Why would you want me? I'm nothing to any of you. Victor's smile turned contemplative. Are you really so ignorant? Has no one told you what you are? An uncomfortable silence fell across the clearing. I looked to Roman, whose expression had turned to granite, then to Nora, who avoided my gaze. A cold feeling settled in my stomach that had nothing to do with the winter air. What am I? I whispered. Enough, Roman growled, the single word vibrating with power. Victor, you're overplaying your hand. You know the consequences of harming one of my pack. Release him, retreat beyond the old borders, and we can discuss terms properly at the next council. Times are changing, Roman, Victor replied, all pretense of congeniality vanishing. The old ways are dying. The strong take what they want. He jerked his head, and one of the men holding Cade twisted his injured arm, drawing a strangled cry of pain from the captive. The girl for your scout. Simple exchange. I started forward, ready to offer myself if it meant ending this standoff. But Nora's grip on my arm turned painful, holding me in place. Don't, she hissed. You don't understand what they'd do to you. They're hurting him because of me, I argued. They're hurting him because they're monsters, she corrected. Don't give them what they want. Before I could respond, a distant howl cut through the tension, a signal that sliced the air like a knife. Victor's head snapped up, his expression shifting to alarm. More howls followed, coming from multiple directions, surrounding our position. Reinforcements, Magnus said with grim satisfaction. Cade's partner must have reached our forward camp. Victor's confidence visibly faltered. This isn't over, he snarled at Roman. The North remembers slights. We'll collect our due. With a sharp gesture to his men, he began a tactical withdrawal, dragging Cade with them as a shield against immediate pursuit. Roman made to follow, a sound building in his chest that was more beast than human, but Magnus caught his arm. Alpha, he warned. We're still outmatched until moonrise, and the girl... The reminder of my presence seemed to pull Roman back from the edge of violence. He turned to me, and what I saw in his face made my breath catch. Raw emotion fighting for control beneath the surface of leadership. We will recover him, he promised. To me or to his pack, I wasn't sure. But first, we get her to safety. The sense of reprieve was short-lived. As Victor's group retreated into the trees, the wounded Cade managed to wrench free for just a moment, long enough to shout a warning that echoed through the clearing. Alpha! It's a trap! They know what she is! A gunshot cracked the winter silence, and Cade crumpled to the snow. Time slowed to a crawl as Cade's body hit the ground. A crimson stain bloomed across the pristine white snow, stark against the winter landscape. Roman's roar of rage shattered the frozen moment, the sound so primal and raw it sent birds scattering from distant trees. "Get her out of here," he commanded Magnus, his voice barely recognizable as human. "Secondary rendezvous point. Now." Magnus grabbed my arm, but I couldn't tear my eyes from the fallen man. "We can't just leave him," I protested. "He's still alive," Nora whispered, her heightened senses clearly detecting what I couldn't at this distance. "Barely." Roman was already moving, his entire body radiating lethal intent as he strode toward the tree line where Victor and his men had retreated. "Dominic, Asher, with me. We retrieve our packmate. The rest of you, protect Alara with your lives." The authority in his voice brooked no argument. Magnus pulled me against his side, ready to run, when a new sound stopped us all. The unmistakable metallic click of multiple safeties being released from hidden positions around our clearing. "I wouldn't," Victor's voice called from the shadows. "Not unless you want to see what silver bullets do to your precious pack at close range." From the undergrowth and behind trees, more of Victor's men emerged, at least a dozen, each armed with tactical rifles. The air filled with a sharp chemical scent that made Nora flinch beside me. "Wolfsbane," she murmured. "They've treated their ammunition." Roman froze, calculating odds I could see were impossible. His pack was surrounded, outnumbered, with no moon to strengthen them, and a wounded man bleeding out on the snow. And somehow, inexplicably, I was at the center of it all. "Let her walk to me," Victor said, stepping back into view with casual confidence. "And your scout may yet survive the day." "Don't you dare," Roman growled, not looking at me but clearly sensing my intention to sacrifice myself. This ends here. I'd never felt more useless, more human, than in that moment, watching these powerful beings locked in a deadly stalemate, with lives hanging in the balance because of me. My fingers closed around grandmother's pendant, seeking comfort in its familiar contours. The crescent moon and wolf seemed to burn against my palm, suddenly alive with significance I was only beginning to understand. A memory surfaced. Grandmother sitting by the fire, telling stories of the old days. "There are powers in this world that don't answer to strength alone," she'd said, eyes distant with remembrance. "Sometimes the greatest force comes from the binding of broken things, from the spaces between worlds." I didn't know what power Victor believed I possessed, or why Roman protected me so fiercely, but I knew I couldn't stand by while others died for me. The pendant pulsed warmly against my skin as I stepped forward. "Enough," I said, my voice carrying unexpected authority across the clearing. "No one else needs to be hurt." All eyes turned to me, some surprised, others calculating, Roman's blazing with a mixture of fury and fear. "I'll go with you," I told Victor, ignoring Roman's warning growl. "But first, you let them take their wounded and leave safely." Victor's lips curved in a triumphant smile. "The little human thinks she can negotiate." "The little human is what you want," I countered. "For reasons I don't understand. So yes, I'm negotiating." Something shifted in the air around us. A tension, a pressure building like the moment before lightning strikes. The pendant at my throat grew almost painfully hot, and I noticed with shock that the ancient symbols on the boundary stones had begun to glow with faint blue light. Victor noticed too, his smile faltering. "Bring her to me," he ordered his men. "Now." Roman moved to intercept the approaching gunman, but I raised my hand to stop him. "Trust me," I said, echoing his words from earlier. "Please." Our eyes locked across the clearing, his fierce amber gaze searching mine for something I couldn't name. Whatever he found there made him hesitate just long enough for me to slip past Magnus's restraining hand. "Alara," Roman called, my name sounding like both warning and plea on his lips. "Don't do this." I turned back, memorizing his face. The proud angles, the barely contained power, the concern he couldn't hide. "I won't let anyone else be hurt because of me." The snow crunched beneath my boots as I walked toward Victor, each step feeling like a surrender and a rebellion simultaneously. His men parted to let me pass, their expressions ranging from triumph to unnerving hunger. I kept my eyes fixed on Cade's crumpled form, measuring the shallow rise and fall of his chest. Still breathing. Still time. A wise decision, Victor said as I approached, reaching out to touch my face with cold fingers. I jerked away from his touch, skin crawling with instinctive revulsion. Your men will take him to Roman's pack, I insisted. Now, before he bleeds out. Victor studied me like a curiosity in a museum, head tilted slightly. You truly don't know what you are, do you? He inhaled deeply, nostrils flaring. But your blood remembers, even if your mind doesn't. I can smell it awakening. Before I could respond, a new sound cut through the tension. A long, powerful howl that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Victor's head snapped up, alarm crossing his features for the first time. Sir! One of his men called urgently. Multiple signatures approaching, fast. Victor cursed under his breath. It seems your alpha called reinforcements after all. His hand closed around my upper arm, grip painfully tight. Time to leave. The wounded man, I reminded him, digging in my heels. Is the least of your concerns now, he replied, dragging me toward the trees. I fought against his hold, but his strength was inhuman. Behind us, I heard shouts as Roman and his pack realized what was happening. The air filled with the sounds of conflict. Growls, cries of pain, the terrifying crack of gunfire. Through the chaos, I caught glimpses of movement too fast to track clearly. Roman's people engaging Victor's, buying time, creating diversion. Victor pulled me deeper into the forest, away from the boundary stones, away from Roman. Two of his men flanked us, rifles ready, scanning for pursuit. My mind raced, searching for options. I wasn't a warrior, wasn't even particularly athletic. My only weapons were knowledge of these woods, and whatever strange power had made the boundary stones glow at my proximity. You won't get far, I told him, stumbling over hidden roots beneath the snow. These are Roman's lands. Not for much longer, Victor replied, not slowing his pace. The East has grown weak under his leadership, clinging to outdated traditions while the rest of us evolve. Is that what you call evolution? Ambushing diplomatic missions? Shooting unarmed men? His grip tightened painfully on my arm. Sentiment is luxury in our world. Power is the only currency that matters. Then why do you need me? I challenged. If you're so powerful. Something flickered across his face. Greed, perhaps, or darker ambition. Every king needs a queen. Every alpha needs a Luna, and you, little witch, have the rarest blood of all. Luna. The word echoed through my mind, connecting to fragments of grandmother's stories, tales of women who could walk between worlds, who could command loyalty from even the most dominant wolves. I'd always thought they were just fables meant to empower a young girl growing up in a harsh environment. I'm not what you think I am, I said, even as doubt crept in. I'm just a woman who lives in the woods. Victor laughed, the sound sharp as breaking ice. Your grandmother knew better. Why else would she have hidden you away all these years? Why else would she have given you that? He gestured toward the pendant still hanging at my throat, the mark of a Luna bloodline. We reached a small clearing where several black SUVs waited, engines running, a stark reminder that these creatures moved through the modern world despite their ancient nature. Victor jerked his chin toward the nearest vehicle. Get in. I planted my feet, summoning every ounce of stubborn defiance I possessed. No. His eyes narrowed, patience visibly thinning. Don't test me, girl. You'll find I'm not as chivalrous as your Eastern alpha. I'm not going anywhere with you. Victor's control snapped. He grabbed me by the throat, lifting me until my toes barely scraped the ground. Your cooperation is preferred but not required, he snarled, face inches from mine. Once claimed, you'll have no choice but to obey your alpha. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision as his fingers tightened. The pendant burned against my skin like a brand, and with that pain came a surge of unexpected clarity. If what Victor said was true, if I truly had this Luna bloodline, then perhaps I had power I didn't understand. With the last of my oxygen, I wrapped my hand around the pendant and thought of Roman, his fierce protection, his gentle hands warming mine, the way he'd carried me through miles of snow without complaint. I thought of his loyalty to his packmate, his willingness to risk everything rather than abandon one of his own. I thought of the dream I'd had the night before. Running with wolves beneath a moon so bright, it turned the forest to silver. The pendant shattered in my grip, releasing a blinding flash of light that seared through the clearing. Victor howled in pain, dropping me as he staggered backward, hands covering his eyes. His men reacted with confusion, momentarily blinded. I didn't hesitate. I ran. Years of wandering these forests gave me an advantage they couldn't match. Knowledge of every hidden hollow, every game trail, every treacherous ravine disguised by snow. I pushed myself harder than I ever had before, lungs burning with each frozen breath, the taste of blood sharp on my tongue where I'd bitten my lip in Victor's grip. Behind me, angry shouts and the sounds of pursuit faded and grew as my captors recovered and gave chase. I didn't look back. Couldn't afford to. My entire being narrowed to the simple primal need to escape, to get back to Roman and the relative safety of his pack. I wasn't sure how long I ran, time measured only in ragged breaths and the burning of overtaxed muscles. The forest blurred around me, familiar landmarks made strange by fear and exhaustion. When my foot caught on a hidden root, sending me tumbling down a snow-covered embankment, I couldn't find the strength to rise immediately. I lay there, gasping, the cold seeping into my bones as I stared up at the winter sky visible through bare branches. The sun had begun its early descent, painting the clouds with hints of gold and pink. Soon it would be dark. Soon the moon would rise. The thought gave me renewed purpose. I had to find Roman before moonrise, had to warn him of Victor's plans. Had to understand what this Luna business truly meant before anyone else died protecting me. I forced myself to my feet, orienting myself by the angle of the fading sunlight. The boundary stones lay to the west. If I could reach them before Victor's men found me. A twig snapped behind me. I whirled, heart leaping to my throat. A massive black wolf stood at the crest of the embankment, its amber eyes fixed on me with unnerving intelligence. For a moment, pure animal terror froze me in place, until recognition dawned. "Roman?" I whispered. The wolf's ears pricked forward at the sound of my voice. It was easily twice the size of any natural wolf I'd ever glimpsed in these woods, its coat gleaming blue-black in the fading light. But it was the eyes that confirmed my suspicion, the same burning amber that had watched me across my cabin the night before. He had shifted, despite the risks of doing so before moonrise. The wolf, Roman, descended the slope with fluid grace, stopping a few feet away. His posture wasn't threatening, but the raw power evident in his massive frame sent instinctive shivers through me. This close, I could see his chest heaving with exertion, small clouds of vapor forming with each breath. He had run hard to find me. "They're coming," I told him, feeling only slightly foolish for speaking to a wolf. "Victor," he said, "he wants me for my blood. Something about being a Luna." Roman's eyes narrowed, a growl rumbling deep in his chest. He moved closer, circling me once before stopping at my side, his massive shoulder pressing against my hip in what felt unmistakably like a protective gesture. "I broke grandmother's pendant," I continued, showing him the empty chain still hanging around my neck. There was light. I don't understand what happened, but it gave me time to escape. The wolf's attention shifted suddenly, head snapping up, ears pivoting toward something I couldn't hear. A warning growl vibrated through his body into mine. "They found us," I whispered. In answer, Roman pressed harder against me, clearly wanting me to move. I took the hint, allowing him to guide me deeper into the forest, away from the direction his senses had alerted to danger. We moved together in an awkward tandem, me stumbling with exhaustion, him slowing his natural pace to stay with me. As darkness began to settle over the forest, a new fear took root. "The others," I said between labored breaths. "Your pack, are they?" Roman huffed, the sound somehow conveying reassurance. Whether that meant they were safe or simply that I shouldn't worry, I couldn't tell. The limitations of cross-species communication were becoming frustratingly apparent. We had traveled perhaps half a mile when Roman froze, hackles rising along his powerful spine. This time, even my human ears caught the sound. branches breaking under heavy footfalls, voices calling to each other through the trees. Victor's men had picked up our trail. Roman looked up at me, then deliberately toward a massive oak tree nearby, its gnarled roots creating a natural hollow beneath the trunk. The message was clear. Hide. I'm not letting you face them alone, I protested. The wolf bared his teeth, not at me, but at the thought of my involvement in whatever conflict was coming. He nudged me insistently toward the hiding place. Fine, I conceded, crouching to slip into the hollow. But if anything happens to you, I'm coming out. Roman's expression, and it was remarkable how expressive a wolf's face could be, suggested this was a terrible plan. But there was no time to argue. He turned to face the approaching threat, body coiled with lethal anticipation. From my hiding place, I watched as Victor himself emerged from the twilight shadows, followed by 3 of his men. Unlike Roman, he remained in human form, though his posture held something decidedly inhuman in its calculation. The mighty Alpha, reduced to his base nature, Victor taunted, circling wide to flank Roman. Was the girl worth spending your strength before moonrise? You're weakened now, vulnerable. All for a human you barely know. Roman's growl deepened, his massive body moving to keep Victor in sight as the Northern Alpha circled. She's more valuable than you understand, Victor continued. The last of a bloodline we thought extinct. Do you even comprehend what power you stumbled upon? What advantage her claiming would bring to your territory? Roman lunged suddenly, a black blur of speed and fury. Victor barely avoided the snapping jaws, his preternatural reflexes saving him from having his throat torn out. The other men raised their rifles, but Victor waved them off. No, he commanded. The Alpha is mine. What followed was a deadly dance. Victor maintaining human form but moving with inhuman speed, Roman hampered by the exhaustion of premature shifting, but driven by rage and protective instinct. They clashed again and again, neither gaining clear advantage, blood from both staining the snow crimson. From my hiding place, I watched in horror as Roman began to slow, his movements becoming less fluid, more desperate. Whatever energy he had expended to shift and find me was taking its toll. And Victor, cruel and calculating, seemed to be toying with him now, drawing out the fight, wearing him down. Yield, Victor suggested after landing a particularly brutal blow that sent Roman skidding through the snow. Acknowledge the North as dominant. Give us the girl. You can keep your territory, as our vassal state. Roman's answer was another lunge, powerful jaws closing on Victor's forearm. The Northern Alpha howled in pain, but managed to break free, kicking Roman in the ribs with enough force that I heard something crack. I couldn't watch this anymore. Couldn't let Roman die protecting me from a fate I didn't even understand. My fingers closed around a heavy branch lying near my hiding place as I prepared to emerge, to create a distraction, to offer myself, to do something besides cower while others fought my battles. The first silver light of the rising moon filtered through the trees at that exact moment, touching Roman's midnight fur with an ethereal glow. The effect was immediate and electrifying. His posture straightened, power seeming to flow into his massive form with each passing second as the moon climbed higher. Victor noticed too, his expression shifting from confidence to calculation. Kill him now, he ordered his men, abandoning the pretense of honorable combat, before he regains full strength. The men raised their rifles, taking aim at Roman's heart. Time slowed to a heartbeat as my hand closed around grandmother's broken pendant chain, still hanging at my throat. A silent plea formed in my mind. Please, whatever power brought me to this moment, whatever blood flows in my veins, help me save him. The moon broke fully from the horizon, its light suddenly flooding the clearing with silvery radiance. And something within me, something that had been sleeping my entire life, awakened in answer. The moonlight struck me like a physical force, pouring through my skin and into my veins. Every sense heightened to painful clarity. The whisper of snow falling from branches, the copper scent of blood on the air, the taste of approaching storm on my tongue. Power surged through me, ancient and instinctive, responding to a call I hadn't known I could make. I stepped from my hiding place, the broken pendant chain still clutched in my hand. All eyes turned to me, but it was Roman's gaze that held mine. recognition, and something deeper flashing in those amber depths. "Stop," I commanded, my voice carrying a resonance that wasn't entirely human. The word rippled through the clearing like a physical wave, and to my shock, Victor's men lowered their weapons as if compelled by forces beyond their control. Victor himself stood frozen, his expression a mixture of awe and calculation. "Luna," he whispered, the title no longer just a word, but an acknowledgement of what the moonlight had revealed. So the legends were true. Roman took advantage of the distraction, moving to position himself between me and the northern pack. Even wounded, he radiated lethal intent, a low growl rumbling continuously from his massive chest. "You feel it now, don't you?" Victor called to me, ignoring Roman's warning. "The power in your blood awakening. The connection to the moon, to the pack bonds." He extended a hand, as though offering salvation. "Come with me willingly, and I'll spare your Eastern Alpha. Fight against this, and you doom you both." The certainty in his voice made me hesitate. Hours ago, I'd been just a solitary woman living on the edges of civilization. Now I stood bathed in moonlight, feeling ancient power thrumming through my body, caught between warring packs of shapeshifters. The sheer impossibility of it all threatened to overwhelm me, but then Roman pressed against my side, his warm fur brushing my hand, and clarity returned. Whatever I was, whatever power I possessed, it wasn't meant for Victor's ambitions. "I choose him," I said simply, placing my hand on Roman's massive head. "I choose the East." The words felt ritual, significant in ways I didn't fully understand. As I spoke them, the moonlight around us seemed to intensify, casting our shadows in sharp relief against the snow. Roman's body trembled beneath my touch, and for a moment, I feared his injuries were worse than they appeared. Then the transformation began. Unlike the violent shape-shifting of horror films, this change flowed like water, the great wolf's form blurring, reshaping, until Roman knelt beside me in human form, naked but for the blood staining his skin from various wounds. Despite his injuries, he rose to his feet with fluid grace, standing tall beside me as he faced Victor. "She has chosen," Roman said, his voice rough with exertion but filled with unmistakable authority. "By the old laws, by moon right, by blood claim, she has chosen. Would you violate the most sacred covenant of our kind, Victor?" Victor's face contorted with rage. "The old ways are dying, moon rights, blood claims, ancient superstitions while the human world encroaches year by year, yet you sought her for exactly those powers," Roman countered. "You can't have it both ways. Either the old magic matters, in which case her choice is binding, or it doesn't, in which case she's worthless to you." Logic battled with ambition across Victor's features. "One Luna doesn't make you invincible, Roman. And once word spreads that the East harbors the last of the Moon Daughters, every ambitious alpha from here to the coast will come hunting." His smile turned cruel. "How long before one succeeds where I failed?" "Let them try," Roman replied, his tone suggesting he almost welcomed the challenge. A howl cut through the night, followed by another and another. The reinforcements Roman had mentioned were close now, their voices carrying triumph and territorial claim. Victor recognized the shift in advantage. "This isn't over," he warned, backing away. "Not by moonlight or blood or any power." His gaze fixed on me, hungry and calculating. "We'll meet again, Luna. Not if I see you first," I replied, the words coming from some newly awakened part of me that refused to show fear. With a sharp gesture to his men, Victor retreated into the darkness, their forms quickly swallowed by the winter night. Even after they disappeared from sight, Roman remained tense beside me, listening for signs of treachery. Only when new wolves began to materialize from the forest, massive creatures similar to Roman's wolf form but in various colorations, did he allow his guard to lower slightly. Among them, I recognized the distinctive markings of Magnus, Nora, and the others who had sheltered in my cabin during the blizzard. Nora approached first, her wolf form a sleek gray, eyes assessing Roman's injuries with clear concern. Behind her, two wolves dragged a makeshift stretcher bearing Cade's unconscious but living form. The sight of their wounded packmate triggered a renewed surge of guilt and questions. "He's alive because of you," Roman said, reading my expression. "Your negotiation bought us time until reinforcements arrived." "I don't understand any of this," I admitted, the adrenaline beginning to fade, leaving me shaky and overwhelmed. "What am I? What happened when the moonlight—" Roman placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, steadying me. "You're a Luna," he said. The simple words weighted with reverence. "A moon daughter. Women born with the ability to amplify pack bonds, to draw power directly from the moon itself, to command wolves regardless of rank or territory." His expression softened. "They were thought to be extinct, the bloodlines hunted to elimination centuries ago by those who feared their influence. My grandmother," I whispered, fragments of memory falling into place. "She knew. She hid me here, taught me to avoid attention, to never cross certain boundaries." The pendant that had shattered in my hand had been her final protection, a charm that concealed whatever scent or signature would have revealed my nature to passing wolves. "She preserved the last of a sacred lineage," Roman agreed, though I doubt she anticipated a blizzard forcing 10 wolves to seek shelter in exactly the wrong cabin. Despite everything, the danger, the revelations, the blood still staining the snow, I found myself laughing at the absurdity of it all. "So what happens now?" Roman's expression grew serious again. "Now we get you somewhere safe. Victor was right about one thing. Once word spreads, others will come." "Back to my cabin?" I suggested, already knowing the answer. "No longer safe," he confirmed. "I'm sorry, Alara, but your life as you knew it ended the moment we stepped through your door." The reality of what he was saying hit me with physical force. My home, my independence, my quiet existence, all gone in the space of a day. I looked around at the gathered wolves, their eyes reflecting moonlight as they watched me with a mixture of curiosity and something approaching reverence. "You want me to go with you?" I said, not a question. "To your territory." Roman nodded once. "As our Luna, if you'll accept the position." Something vulnerable flickered across his face, quickly masked. "As my Luna, specifically." The implication was clear even to my human understanding of pack dynamics. "Is that a marriage proposal?" A surprised rumble of what might have been laughter came from the wolves surrounding us. Roman shot them a quelling look before returning his attention to me. "A bond deeper than marriage," he corrected. "But not one I would force upon you, regardless of traditional expectations. You've had enough choices taken from you today." The sincerity in his voice touched something in me, a recognition that despite his power and authority, this man respected boundaries, respected choice. It was a stark contrast to Victor's attempts at coercion and control. "I need time," I said honestly. "Everything is happening too fast." "Time you shall have," Roman promised. "But not here. Not tonight." He glanced at the sky, where clouds were beginning to gather, threatening more snow. "Will you come with us to the Eastern Territories? Not as my claimed Luna, but as an honored guest under pack protection while you decide your path?" Put that way, the choice seemed obvious. My cabin was compromised, my identity revealed, my safety dependent on strength I didn't possess alone. And beneath these practical considerations lay something else, a pull toward Roman and his pack that felt both new and strangely familiar, like remembering something I'd always known. "I'll come," I agreed. "But I need to gather some things from my home first." "Of course." He turned to the assembled wolves, issuing commands with the easy authority of someone born to lead. "Magnus, take half the pack and ensure Victor's forces have truly withdrawn. Nora, escort our wounded back to the eastern compound. Prepare the south wing for our guest." To a smaller wolf with distinctive silver markings, he added, "Theo, find me something to wear, for the moon's sake." The pack dispersed to their tasks with immediate obedience, though several cast curious glances my way before disappearing into the forest. Only Nora lingered, her wolf eyes conveying a message to Roman that needed no words. "Yes, I'm certain," he answered her unspoken question. "Go, we'll join you by dawn." When we were finally alone, Roman turned back to me with a weariness he hadn't allowed his pack to see. In the moonlight, his injuries looked even worse. Deep gashes across his chest and arms, bruising already darkening along his ribs where Victor had landed that brutal kick. "You're hurt," I said, stepping closer to examine the damage. "It will heal," he dismissed. "The moon accelerates our recovery." I reached out hesitantly, my fingers hovering above a particularly nasty wound on his shoulder. "May I?" He nodded once, eyes never leaving my face as I gently assessed the injury. My years of crafting herbal remedies had taught me basic medical knowledge, enough to recognize that some of these wounds needed proper cleaning and possibly stitches. "At least let me," I began. But the words died in my throat as my fingers made contact with his skin. Warmth flowed from my palm into his flesh, the sensation not unlike the power that had surged through me when the moonlight first touched my skin. Beneath my hand, the ragged edges of the wound began to knit together, new skin forming before my eyes. Roman drew in a sharp breath, more from surprise than pain. "Luna healing," he murmured, watching in fascination as the wound closed completely, leaving only a faint silver line where the gash had been. "Another gift of your bloodline," I pulled back, startled by this new manifestation of abilities I hadn't known I possessed. "Could I have healed Cade, if I'd understood sooner? Perhaps," Roman acknowledged. "But you couldn't have known, and there will be time to explore the extent of your gifts once we reach Eastern Territory." He glanced up at the clouded moon. "Speaking of which, we should move. Victor may have retreated, but these woods aren't safe." Theo returned at that moment, a bundle of clothing in his now human mouth. The transformation from wolf to man seemed easier for him than it had been for Roman, requiring only seconds to complete. Unlike Roman's commanding presence, Theo had a lighter energy about him, his young face breaking into a grin as he handed over the clothes. "Best I could do on short notice, Alpha," he explained. "Stashed emergency pack from the Northern Boundary Patrol." "It'll do," Roman replied, quickly donning the simple black thermal shirt and pants. "Report." "No sign of the Northern Pack within 3 miles," Theo confirmed. "They're in full retreat. Magnus is establishing a perimeter around the Luna's cabin to secure it while she collects her belongings." Luna. The title still felt foreign applied to me, yet with each passing hour beneath the moonlight, something within me responded to it, a recognition of identity I hadn't known I was missing. The journey back to my cabin passed in relative silence, Theo scouting ahead while Roman stayed close to my side. I was grateful for the quiet, my mind struggling to process all that had happened since the blizzard first drove 10 wolves to my door. "You're home," Roman said softly as the familiar clearing came into view. The cabin stood just as I had left it that morning. A lifetime ago, it seemed. Light glowed in the windows, and I realized someone from Roman's pack must have gone ahead to prepare for our arrival. The sight of it, so normal, yet forever changed by what I now knew, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Take whatever time you need," Roman told me as we approached the porch. "Pack whatever you wish to bring. The rest can be retrieved later, once we've established proper security." Inside, the cabin felt both achingly familiar and strangely alien, as though I were seeing it through new eyes. The herbs hanging from the rafters, the books lining rough-hewn shelves, the handmade quilts and simple furniture, all artifacts of a life that no longer fit the person I was becoming. I moved through the rooms with purpose, gathering essentials, clothing, journals, medicines I'd crafted, the few keepsakes from grandmother I couldn't bear to leave behind. When I reached her old trunk in the corner of my bedroom, I hesitated, then lifted the heavy lid. Beneath layers of quilts and winter clothing lay a wooden box I'd never opened, respecting grandmother's instruction that it was for dire necessity only. If ever there was such a moment, surely this was it. The box contained several items wrapped in soft cloth, a leather-bound book with unfamiliar script, a silver dagger with moon phases etched along the blade, and a small vial of what looked like liquid moonlight. Beneath these treasures lay a letter addressed simply to my moon daughter. With trembling hands, I broke the wax seal and unfolded the yellowed paper. "My dearest Alara, if you are reading this, then what I feared has come to pass. Your heritage has been discovered. The pendant I gave you was meant to shield your true nature until you were ready, but some destinies cannot be delayed forever. You are the last of an ancient bloodline, the Moon Daughters, women born with the ability to bridge the gap between human and wolf, to draw power directly from the lunar cycle, to heal with a touch and command with a word. In the old days, before the great hunts, a Luna was the heart of every major pack, bringing balance to the wild nature of even the most dominant alphas. Your mother died protecting you from those who would use your gifts for power. I have kept you hidden as long as possible, teaching you strength disguised as survival skills, magic disguised as herbal wisdom. But I always knew this day might come. Trust your instincts. They are older and wiser than your fears. The wolf who recognizes your true nature without seeking to possess it is worthy of your loyalty. The pack that protects without demanding submission deserves your gifts. Remember, a Luna's power comes not from dominance, but from the spaces between, the balance of moon and earth, strength and compassion, wildness and humanity. You were always meant for more than this small cabin and solitary existence. Forgive an old woman for keeping you from your destiny for so long. I only sought to protect you until you were strong enough to protect yourself. With endless love, grandmother tears flowed freely down my face as I finished reading, the letter confirming what Roman had told me while opening a window into grandmother's silent sacrifices. How long had she lived in fear of discovery? How many years had she spent teaching me skills disguised as simple wilderness survival, knowing they were preparation for a heritage I couldn't yet comprehend? Ilara? Roman's voice came softly from the doorway. The pack reports movement to the west. We should leave soon. I wiped my tears, carefully folding grandmother's letter and placing it back in the box along with the other items. This legacy, at least, would come with me to whatever future awaited. I'm ready, I said, rising to my feet with the wooden box cradled in my arms. Roman's eyes fell to the box, recognition flashing across his features. Moon gifts, he murmured. I haven't seen their like in generations. You know what these are? I asked, surprised. Stories only, he admitted. Passed down through alpha lines, Luna artifacts were thought destroyed during the Great Purge. His expression softened. Your grandmother was even more remarkable than I imagined. The simple acknowledgement of her courage brought fresh tears to my eyes. She knew this day would come. She prepared me as best she could. Roman reached out, his hand hovering near my face, asking permission without words. When I didn't pull away, he gently brushed a tear from my cheek, his touch warm against my skin. She would be proud of your courage today, he said, as am I. And the sincerity in his voice broke through the last of my emotional defenses. I stepped forward and did what I'd been wanting to do since he'd shifted back to human form, wrapped my arms around him, burying my face against his chest. After a moment's hesitation, his arms encircled me, strong and secure. We stood like that in the cabin that had been my entire world, holding each other as the reality of all that had changed, and all that still remained uncertain, washed over us. Roman's heartbeat beneath my ear was steady, a counterpoint to my own racing pulse. Whatever comes next, he murmured against my hair, you don't face it alone. I pulled back slightly, looking up into his amber eyes that even in human form held something of the wolf. Promise me something. If it's within my power, he replied without hesitation. Don't treat me as just a Luna, I said. Don't see me as only this bloodline or power or whatever advantages I might bring your pack. See me, Ilara, the woman who let 10 strangers into her home during a blizzard because it was the right thing to do. Something shifted in his expression. Respect deepening into admiration, perhaps even something warmer. I have seen you, Ilara, he said softly. From the first moment you opened your door, I saw your courage, your compassion, your fierce independence. The Luna gift is part of you, but it isn't all of you. His hands tightened slightly where they rested at my waist, and I promised to remember that. Even when others see only the power and not the woman who wields it, the conviction in his voice soothed fears I hadn't fully articulated even to myself. I nodded, stepping back reluctantly to gather my packed bags. Then let's go, I said, taking one last look around the cabin that had been my sanctuary and prison. Show me what life among the wolves looks like. As we stepped outside into the moonlight, I felt again that strange power surging beneath my skin, no longer frightening but familiar, like remembering how to use a muscle long dormant. Whatever changes awaited in Roman's territory, whatever challenges Victor's threats might bring, I would face them with new understanding of who and what I was meant to be. The Luna of the Eastern Pack, a moon daughter. Alara, who had sheltered 10 wolves through the blizzard and found her destiny waiting on the other side of the storm. Dawn broke over the Eastern Territory as our convoy of vehicles crossed what Roman called the inner boundary, a line marked not by physical barriers but by subtle changes in the landscape. The trees grew more deliberately here, planted in patterns that only became apparent when viewed from certain angles. Occasional stone markers, similar to the boundary stones in my forest but smaller, lined the winding road at irregular intervals. Our ancestors chose this land for its natural defenses, Roman explained as we passed through a narrow mountain pass. Water to the east, mountains to the west, with only a few accessible routes in between. I pressed my forehead against the cool window glass, watching this new world unfold before me. After leaving my cabin, we had traveled through the night, switching vehicles at a hidden outpost several hours into the journey. Cade and the other wounded had been transported ahead by what Roman cryptically referred to as faster means, while the bulk of the pack moved in coordinated groups to ensure our safety. Now, as morning light spilled over the mountains, I caught my first glimpse of what would be my new home, at least temporarily. That's not what I expected, I admitted as the Eastern Pack compound came into view. Instead of the primitive encampment I had imagined, a small, modern town nestled in the valley below. Contemporary buildings constructed of natural materials, stone, wood, and glass, blended harmoniously with the landscape. At the center stood a larger structure, its architecture more distinctive, with sweeping lines that somehow evoked both modern design and ancient purpose. The main house, Roman said, following my gaze. Built on the foundation of the original pack den, expanded over generations. It's beautiful, I whispered, trying to reconcile this sophisticated community with the primal forces I had witnessed in the forest. How many live here? 217 pack members in the immediate compound, he answered. Another 300 scattered throughout the territory in smaller settlements. Not all are shifters. Many are human family members, or those with the recessive gene who can't transform. The implications of his words sank in slowly. A whole society, hidden in plain sight. Not entirely hidden, he corrected. We own businesses, attend universities, participate in human politics when necessary. But our true nature remains private. Our core traditions protected. His hand found mine across the center console. A brief, reassuring touch. You'll understand better once you've settled in. As our vehicle descended into the valley, I noticed increased activity. People emerging from homes, gathering along the main road, their expressions curious and expectant. Word of our arrival had clearly preceded us. They know about me, I realized aloud. Roman's expression turned apologetic. News travels quickly through pack bonds. I've asked for discretion, but he gestured toward the growing crowds. Your arrival is significant. Significant felt like an understatement. The way people watched our approaching vehicle, with expressions ranging from awe to skepticism to barely contained excitement, suggested my presence was more than just unusual. It was historic. No pressure, I muttered, suddenly self-conscious of my travel-worn appearance and the dried blood still staining my coat sleeve. Roman's lips twitched with suppressed amusement. They'll adore you regardless. A Luna returning to the pack after generations without one, you could arrive covered in mud and wearing sackcloth, and they'd still see only the miracle. That's what worries me, I admitted. I'm not a miracle, Roman. I'm just a woman who discovered she has strange abilities and an even stranger heritage. What if I can't be what they're expecting? His expression softened. You don't have to be anything except yourself, Alara. The Luna gifts express themselves differently in each bloodline. There's no template you must follow, no predetermined role to fill. He hesitated, then added, though there will be some who expect traditional observances. Traditional observances, I repeated. Like what, exactly? He looked distinctly uncomfortable. Perhaps that's a conversation for after you've rested. Before I could press further, our vehicle pulled up before the main house, where a welcoming committee had assembled on the wide stone steps. I recognized Nora among them, now dressed in simple but elegant clothing, her posture formal as she stood slightly apart from the others. "Ready?" Roman asked, his voice gentle. I took a deep breath, centering myself the way grandmother had taught me during anxiety-inducing trips to town, as I'll ever be. The moment I stepped from the vehicle, a hush fell over the gathered crowd. Hundreds of eyes tracked my movements as Roman came around to stand beside me, his hand resting lightly at the small of my back, a gesture that felt both protective and slightly possessive. "Welcome to the East," said an elderly man at the center of the welcoming committee, stepping forward with surprising grace for his apparent age. "I am Elder Thorn, senior council member of the Eastern Pack." I inclined my head, instinctively mirroring his formal tone. "Thank you for your welcome. I'm Alara." A murmur rippled through the crowd at the sound of my voice. Several people near the front visibly shivered, and I realized with a start that the resonance I had felt in the forest, the power that had compelled Victor's men to lower their weapons, was present even now, albeit subtly. Elder Thorn smiled, the expression warming his weathered features. "Indeed you are. The first Luna to grace our territory in 5 generations. He gestured to the massive doors behind him. "Please, enter and be welcome. There will be time for formal introductions after you've rested from your journey." I glanced at Roman, who nodded encouragement. As we ascended the steps together, the crowd parted respectfully, though many reached out as if drawn by an invisible force, their fingertips just brushing my coat as I passed. The gesture seemed more reverent than intrusive, and I found myself smiling tentatively at those nearest the path. Inside, the main house proved even more impressive. Soaring ceilings with exposed beams, walls of glass framing spectacular mountain views, spaces that managed to feel both grand and intimate simultaneously. Modern comforts blended seamlessly with traditional elements. Hand-carved wooden panels depicting wolf scenes, ancient-looking tapestries preserved in glass cases, river stones polished by generations of hands incorporated into doorways and hearths. "The south wing has been prepared for you," Nora said, falling into step beside us as Elder Thorn excused himself to address the dispersing crowd. "It offers the most privacy and the best views of the moonrise." Of course, the moonrise would be a consideration. My new reality continued to assert itself in unexpected details. Nora led us through a series of corridors, eventually opening double doors into what could only be described as a luxury apartment. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a sitting area with comfortable furniture arranged around a stone fireplace. Beyond, I glimpsed a bedroom with what looked like the most inviting bed I'd ever seen. "Your bags have been brought up," Nora explained, gesturing to my belongings, carefully arranged near a walnut desk. "The kitchen is fully stocked, though meals in the main dining hall are served at traditional hours. The bathroom includes a soaking tub I thought you might appreciate after—" She hesitated delicately. "Recent events." "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness. "How is Cade, and the others who were injured?" Nora's expression brightened at the question. "Cade is stable. Our medical team extracted the bullet and administered the necessary treatments. The others sustained only minor injuries." She glanced at Roman. "Though our alpha should probably visit the infirmary himself." Roman waved away her concern. "Later. First, Alara needs to settle in." To me, he added, "Rest. Explore your rooms. When you're ready for company or have questions, simply press this." He indicated a simple panel near the door with several unmarked buttons. "And if I want to explore beyond these rooms?" I asked, not wanting to seem ungrateful, but already feeling the stirrings of confinement after a lifetime of forest freedom. "Press the second button," he replied. "Someone will come to escort you." Seeing my expression, he added, "Not to restrict you, but to guide you. This compound is extensive, and some areas require context." I nodded my understanding, though I couldn't help wondering what areas might need context, and why. Still, exhaustion was beginning to blur the edges of my awareness, the adrenaline of the past 24 hours finally ebbing to leave bone-deep weariness in its wake. "Rest," Roman repeated softly, correctly reading my fatigue. His hand lifted as if to touch my face, then hesitated, dropping back to his side. "We'll talk more when you've had time to recover." After they departed, I stood alone in the center of my new accommodations, surrounded by luxury yet feeling strangely unmoored. Everything had changed so completely, so quickly. I moved to the windows, gazing out at the unfamiliar landscape. Beautiful, but not mine. Not yet. The bathroom did indeed feature a magnificent soaking tub, and I indulged in the simple pleasure of hot water and fragrant oils, washing away the blood and fear and uncertainty of the forest confrontation. Afterward, wrapped in the softest robe I'd ever worn, I examined the contents of Grandmother's wooden box more carefully. The book contained handwritten accounts of Luna histories, dating back centuries. Some pages were in languages I couldn't read, others in English or French. I skimmed entries describing Luna gifts, healing abilities activated by touch and intention, heightened empathic sense of pack emotions, the capacity to ease shifting pain for young or injured wolves, the power to command through voice when necessary, though this was described as a sacred trust not to be used lightly. The silver dagger seemed primarily ceremonial, its hilt inlaid with moonstone and inscribed with the phases of the moon. The vial of liquid moonlight remained mysterious, its contents neither fully liquid nor gas, swirling with silvery light whenever disturbed. A small note attached simply read, "For dire necessity, once used, cannot be recreated." I carefully returned the items to their box, my mind spinning with questions only partially answered. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me, and I fell into the welcoming embrace of the massive bed, slipping almost instantly into deep sleep. Dreams came vividly, running through moonlit forests on 4 paws, feeling the pack bonds like golden threads connecting me to others, standing on a high cliff overlooking territories that stretched to the horizon, a sense of responsibility both weighty and righteous settling on my shoulders. Roman beside me in both human and wolf form, our energies complementary, his fierce protection balanced by my nurturing strength. I woke at dusk, momentarily disoriented before remembering where I was and why. The dreams lingered, not fading like normal nighttime fantasies, but settling into my consciousness like memories or premonitions. Through the windows, I watched the sun sink behind the mountains, painting the sky in dramatic hues of orange and purple. After dressing in clean clothes from my packed belongings, I explored my suite more thoroughly, discovering thoughtful touches that suggested careful preparation, books similar to those I'd had in my cabin, herbs and plants arranged on the windowsill in patterns I used at home, simple art featuring forest scenes that resembled my woods. Someone had gone to considerable effort to make this space feel welcoming, to ease the transition from my solitary existence to this communal one. The realization both touched and unsettled me. How much did they know about my previous life? How long had I been observed without knowing? When hunger finally drove me to action, I hesitated before the panel Roman had indicated. Did I want company yet? Was I ready to face more of this strange new world and its expectations? My finger hovered over the second button, the one that would bring an escort for exploration, before decisively pressing it. Within minutes, a soft knock announced my guide. Opening the door revealed a young woman perhaps a few years my junior, her expression bright with barely contained excitement. "Luna," she greeted me, the title still strange to my ears. "I'm Ivy. Alpha Roman asked me to assist you if you wish to explore the compound." "Just Alara is fine," I corrected gently. Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh, of course, if that's your preference. Alara." She seemed to test the name, as if using it without the title felt vaguely transgressive. "Where would you like to go first? The gardens? The library? The dining hall? The moonrise gathering starts in an hour, but there's time for a quick tour before then." "Moonrise gathering?" I echoed. "The welcoming ceremony," she explained, then registered my confusion. "Did no one mention—" "Oh, perhaps they wanted it to be a surprise. I'm not particularly fond of surprises at the moment," I admitted. "What exactly is this ceremony?" Ivy looked distinctly uncomfortable. "I should probably let Alpha Roman or Elder Thorn explain the details. But it's nothing to worry about. Just a formal welcome, acknowledging your arrival and status." She brightened. "There will be music and food afterward. The whole pack attends moonrise gatherings, especially significant ones." Despite her reassurances, uneasiness settled in my stomach. "Perhaps you could show me the gardens first. I'd like some fresh air." "Of course." The gardens proved extensive and beautiful, cultivated areas blending into more natural landscapes, with winding paths connecting various spaces designed for both beauty and function. Medicinal herbs grew alongside ornamental flowers. Fruit trees created natural arbors. Stones arranged in circular patterns formed gathering places both intimate and communal. As we walked, Ivy provided commentary that revealed both the physical and spiritual significance of different areas. Some spaces were clearly designed for solitude and reflection, others for teaching or community gatherings. The entire design spoke of a people deeply connected to nature while maintaining distinctly human needs for order and purpose. "This is my favorite spot," Ivy confided, leading me to a small clearing where a natural spring bubbled up from stone, creating a tiny brook that wound through ferns and moss. It's said that Luna Alexandria used to meditate here daily, drawing power from the connection between water and earth. "Luna Alexandria?" I questioned. "The last Luna of the Eastern Pack," Ivy explained. 5 generations ago, as Elder Thorn mentioned, during the Great Purge, she sacrificed herself to save 37 Pack children, using Luna voice to command the hunters to follow her instead of raiding the underground nursery. Her expression grew solemn. "We honor her memory at every full moon gathering." The weight of history, of expectations tied to a bloodline I hadn't known I carried, pressed down on me. Somewhere in the compound, people were preparing a ceremony to welcome me into a role defined by such sacrifice and power. A role I hadn't chosen, had barely begun to understand. "Ivy," I said carefully, "what exactly happens at this welcoming ceremony?" She hesitated, clearly torn between excitement and uncertainty about how much to reveal. "It's traditional for a new Luna to be presented to the Pack under moonlight, where her gifts are most visible. There's usually an exchange of vows between the Luna and the Alpha, acknowledging the sacred balance of their roles." Seeing my expression, she quickly added, "Not marriage vows. More like mutual recognition, though traditionally that often leads to—" She trailed off, blushing slightly. The implications were clear enough. "And this is happening tonight?" I asked, my voice steady despite the internal panic rising. "Without anyone discussing it with me first?" Ivy's eyes widened. "Oh, I assumed Alpha Roman had—" She stopped, visibly distressed. "I've spoken out of turn, haven't I? Please don't be angry. The preparations have been ongoing since word reached us of your existence. Everyone is so excited to have a Luna again after so long." I placed a gentle hand on her arm. "I'm not angry with you, Ivy, but I think I need to speak with Roman before this ceremony takes place." Relief flooded her features. "Of course. He should be in the Alpha quarters, preparing. I can take you there directly." The Alpha quarters occupied the north wing of the main house, a deliberate architectural choice, Ivy explained, as the Alpha traditionally faced the most direct threats, which historically came from the north. The symbolism of Roman's rooms facing the direction from which Victor's pack had come didn't escape me. Unlike the more public areas of the compound, the corridors here were quieter, with fewer people moving about. Those we did encounter showed clear surprise at my presence, bowing respectfully before continuing on their way. The deference made me uncomfortable, but I forced myself to acknowledge each gesture with a nod or smile. Ivy stopped before imposing double doors carved with an intricate scene of wolves running beneath a full moon. "The Alpha's private chambers," she explained unnecessarily. "Shall I announce you?" "Please," I said, suddenly nervous about confronting Roman in his own territory. She knocked confidently, waiting until a deep voice, Roman's, called permission to enter. Ivy opened one door just enough to slip her head inside. "Alpha, Luna Alara wishes to speak with you," she announced formally. A brief pause, then, "Send her in." Ivy stepped back, gesturing for me to enter. "I'll wait here," she whispered encouragingly. The room beyond was surprisingly intimate despite its grandeur. A study lined with bookshelves, Comfortable leather furniture arranged around a fireplace. Large windows overlooking the mountains now painted in twilight hues. Roman stood near a massive desk, dressed in what appeared to be ceremonial clothing, black pants, and a charcoal shirt of fine material, adorned with subtle silver embroidery along the collar and cuffs. An open wooden box on the desk revealed additional items, a silver medallion on a heavy chain, ceremonial bracers made of leather and silver. "Ilara," he greeted me, surprise evident beneath the formal tone. "I didn't expect you to seek me out before the gathering. That's precisely why I'm here," I said, closing the door behind me. "This gathering, this ceremony, were you planning to discuss it with me at any point?" Roman had the grace to look discomfited. "I intended to explain everything after you'd rested. The council moved more quickly than anticipated with preparations." "Preparations for a ceremony where I'm apparently expected to exchange sacred vows with you under the moonlight," I clarified, watching his reaction carefully, without any discussion of what those vows entail or what's expected afterward. He moved away from the desk, approaching slowly as if concerned I might bolt. "The ceremony is largely symbolic, an acknowledgement of your Luna status, and my commitment to protect both you and the gifts you bring to the pack." "And afterward?" I pressed. Ivy mentioned traditions. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Traditionally, yes. The Alpha and Luna form a mated pair. It creates the strongest pack bonds, the most stable leadership." He stopped a respectful distance away. "But as I promised in your cabin, I would never force such a bond. The ceremony can acknowledge your position without finalizing a mating claim." Relief mingled with a more complex emotion I wasn't ready to examine. Why wasn't this explained to me immediately? Why all the secrecy and assumption? Roman ran a hand through his hair, the gesture surprisingly human for someone I'd seen tear through forest and battle in wolf form. "Pack politics," he admitted. "The council has pushed for immediate integration, a traditional claiming to secure your position, and, by extension, the East's power. I've been arguing for a more gradual approach, giving you time to adjust." His expression turned rueful. "It appears they attempted an end run around my authority by proceeding with preparations while keeping you uninformed." The explanation made sense, but still left me uneasy. "And what do you want, Roman? Not the alpha, not the diplomat balancing pack politics. You." The question seemed to catch him off guard. He was silent for a long moment, amber eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my heart beat faster. "What I want," he finally said, voice dropping to a register that vibrated through my bones, "is to honor the woman who opened her door to strangers in a blizzard, who faced down Victor with nothing but courage and compassion for a wounded packmate she barely knew, who stepped from the shadows of isolation into a world of wolves without flinching." He took a careful step closer. "I want to give you time and space to discover your own power, to make your own choices. And yes," his voice roughened slightly, "I want the privilege of standing beside you when you do, as your protector, your ally, and, if you ever choose it, your mate." The raw honesty in his voice struck deeper than any ceremonial vow could have. "Then tell me what happens if I refuse to participate in tonight's ceremony," I challenged. "What are the consequences? Politically? Some faction of the council would protest, claiming tradition has been violated. Practically? Nothing that can't be managed." His eyes held mine. "I am still alpha here. My word is final in matters of pack welfare. And you consider my welfare part of the pack's? I consider your welfare inseparable from my own," he answered simply. The admission hung between us, weighted with implications neither of us was quite ready to explore fully. After a moment, Roman continued more practically. "The ceremony could be modified. The formal presentation to the pack is important. It establishes your position and protection under pack law, but the vows could be adjusted to acknowledge only your Luna status, not any connection between us specifically." I considered the compromise, weighing my discomfort against the political realities of my new situation. "Would that satisfy the council?" "Not entirely," he admitted. "But it would buy us time while respecting your autonomy." Time. The resource I needed most to understand this new world, these new abilities, and most importantly, my own feelings toward the compelling man before me. The dreams I'd experienced during my rest, of running alongside Roman, of shared purpose and complementary strength, lingered at the edges of my consciousness. I'll participate in a modified ceremony, I decided, but I need to know exactly what will be said, what will be expected, before I stand before your entire pack. Relief crossed his features. Of course. We have time before moonrise to review everything. He gestured toward the comfortable chairs near the fireplace. Perhaps Nora should join us. As a female pack member, she might explain certain aspects more comfortably. The consideration touched me. Yes, I'd appreciate that. As Roman moved to summon Nora, I found myself studying him with new awareness. Beyond his obvious physical presence and authority, lay a man navigating complex responsibilities while trying to honor my autonomy. The contrast with Victor's approach couldn't have been starker. The ceremony, when it finally unfolded beneath the rising moon in the central courtyard of the compound, was both more and less overwhelming than I had feared. With Nora's guidance, I had selected a simple white dress from the options provided, complemented by a silver circlet set with moonstone, a historical Luna adornment preserved through generations. Roman stood tall and commanding beside me as Elder Thorn presented us to the assembled pack, explaining in formal language the significance of a Luna's return after 5 generations without one. The hundreds of pack members watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to reverence, many visibly affected when I stepped forward into the full moonlight. The power I had felt in the forest returned tenfold, moonlight seeping into my skin, heightening my senses, creating visible ripples of energy that spread outward to touch each pack member present. Many gasped, some wept openly, others tilted their heads back in silent acknowledgement of something profound passing through them. The modified vows were simple: my acknowledgement of the Eastern Pack as my chosen home, my commitment to use Luna gifts for protection and healing rather than dominance, Roman's pledge to honor my autonomy while providing protection, to value my counsel in pack matters, to recognize the sacred balance between alpha strength and Luna wisdom. What the formal words couldn't capture was the energy that flowed between us as we spoke them, a connection that felt ancient and new simultaneously, drawing strength from both moonlight and the silent witness of the pack surrounding us. When Elder Thorn pronounced me officially recognized as Luna of the Eastern Pack, the gathering erupted in celebration. Not just applause, but actual howls rising into the night sky. Wolf voices lifted in unison from both shifted and human forms. The feast that followed allowed me to begin putting names to faces, to learn the complex relationships and histories that form the backbone of pack society. I discovered that many had special talents beyond shifting. Magnus, I learned, was a master strategist who had once advised human military generals under a carefully constructed identity. Nora specialized in diplomatic relations with other supernatural communities. Theo, the youngest of Roman's elite guard, possessed extraordinarily keen senses even for a wolf. Throughout the evening, Roman remained close without hovering, attentive without possessive. When exhaustion finally began to overtake me, he noticed before I could say anything. "I'll escort you back to your quarters," he offered quietly, the formal alpha persona softening into something more personal. "You've had enough new experiences for one day." The walk through moonlit gardens provided a welcome respite from the intense socialization of the feast. Neither of us spoke until we reached the doors to my suite, where Roman paused, seeming reluctant to end our time together. "Thank you," he finally said, "for accepting the modified ceremony. It meant more to the pack than you can know, having hope restored after so long. I'm still not certain I can be what they need," I admitted. "What you need," his expression gentled. "You already are." He reached out slowly, giving me time to withdraw if I wished, and tucked a strand of pale blonde hair behind my ear. "The rest is just learning to recognize your own strength." The touch lingered, warm against my skin. "And us?" I asked quietly. "What happens now?" "Whatever you wish," he answered. "I meant what I said in the forest, Ilara. You have choices here." His eyes held mine, intense in the moonlight, including how quickly or slowly things developed between us. The air between us thickened with possibility, with unspoken attraction that had been building since that first moment at my cabin door. It would be so easy to close the distance, to discover if his lips felt as warm as his touch, to explore the connection that hummed beneath every interaction. Instead, I placed my hand over his where it rested against my cheek. Slowly, I decided. though the word cost me more than I had expected. I need time to understand who I am here before I can understand what I might be to someone else, even you. Respect and admiration replaced any disappointment he might have felt. "Time you shall have," he promised, turning his hand to clasp mine briefly before stepping back. "Rest well, Luna." "Good night, Alpha," I replied, the formal title softened by the smile I couldn't suppress. As I closed the door behind me, alone again in my luxurious suite, I moved to the windows overlooking the moonlit valley. So much had changed in the span of 2 days. My home, my identity, my understanding of the world and my place within it. Yet beneath the strangeness and uncertainty, a sense of rightness had begun to take root. I thought of grandmother's letter, "Trust your instincts. They are older and wiser than your fears." The woman who had sheltered alone in a forest cabin no longer existed. In her place stood someone new, or perhaps someone ancient, remembering what she had always been meant to be. Luna of the Eastern Pack, the last moon daughter, a woman who had opened her door during a blizzard and found her destiny waiting on the other side. I pressed my palm against the cool glass, watching as moonlight illuminated the world below. My world now, with all its complexity and wonder, whatever challenges Victor and his pack might bring, whatever politics awaited in the broader supernatural community once word of my existence spread, whatever personal journey lay between Roman and myself, I would face them not as the isolated hermit I had been, but as the Luna I was becoming. The moon continued its arc across the night sky, bathing the eastern territory in silver light. And for the first time since the wolves had appeared at my door, I felt not fear or uncertainty, but peace. I belonged here, in this strange and wonderful place, among these people who had risked everything to bring me home. The last thought before sleep claimed me was of Roman, his amber eyes in both human and wolf form, the gentle strength in his touch, the promise of connection that awaited when I was ready to explore it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries about my abilities, new steps toward whatever future awaited. But tonight, beneath the same moon that had witnessed my awakening in the forest, I allowed myself to simply be. Alara, who had sheltered 10 wolves through a blizzard and woken to find herself exactly where she was meant to be.